All right, welcome back to another episode of What Would Wakeman Do? In this video, I'm going to compare a couple of Centurion models to the Nautique G23 based on a comment I received not too long ago. All right, back in the office and ready to do another comparison. So in this video, I'm basing my comparison off of a comment I received a little over a week ago from the time that I'm recording this from Brian Lethert, 7305. And his comment was on my G23 versus M220 versus M240 comparison. And he says, you forgot the best surf wake maker, Centurion 230, 245, and 265, which wins in every category. Now, obviously, that's a pretty biased comment. I think probably the people that would agree with him are Centurion owners, which is fine. Everybody has their opinion. What I'm going to do with this, based on the video that he commented on, is I'm just going to assume he wants to compare it to a G23. You know, I could compare it to Malibu as well, but I'm just going to go along the same lines in this particular one. If somebody wants me to compare Centurion to Malibu, just comment that and maybe it'll be in an upcoming video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the, a 2024 Centurion 230 and a 245 to the 2024 Nautique G23, because I think the 230 as far as length obviously compares to the G23. I think the 245 probably comes closer in price to the G23. I think that the price of the G23 is most likely the highest out of those three. So I'm going to go ahead and compare those three for this video today, mostly based on specs and some experience. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at the specs. Okay, so you can see that I have the 2024 RI230 up on my screen right here. I also have a tab for the RI245, and then I also have a tab for the Nautique G23. So if I come down here, you can see there's a tab for general specs. I'm just going to quickly read through the specs on each one of these pages because I do have them in a spreadsheet like I've been doing in my past videos, so you can see them right next to each other. You can see the 230 is 23 foot and stops there. We have an 81 gallon fuel capacity, which is a good one for a 23 footer. Dry weight of 5,500 pounds. Seating capacity is 14 people. That one surprises me a little bit, and I'll show you why. We have ballast specs, totals 5,400 pounds. What's cool is they actually give you the breakdown of where that stuff sits. But yeah, it's 5,400 pounds, so that's pretty good for a 23-foot boat. Let's jump over to the 245. Come down here, look at the general specs. We got 24 foot 5 inches, which is very typical of the 24-foot boats across the different brands. As you saw, I think the one that I did in the last video was the 24 RZX, and it was the same length. Then we have 89 gallon fuel capacity, which is pretty good. 5,700 pound weight, and then seating capacity is 16 people. Again, that kind of surprises me for the seating capacity. Then let's jump down to ballast specs, and we have 5,650 in total available ballast there. So now let's jump to the G23. We've got 6,000 pounds dry weight. We've got 16 people. We've got 65.6 fuel capacity. So far, out of all the boats I've compared and all the videos I've done, Nautique has the lowest amount of fuel, which I think is good if you don't need to go for a long time. Like if you're doing a 3-day weekend, this isn't going to last you all weekend. So it's not good in that scenario, but it's good if you want more room for ballast. But that's not necessarily the case between these boats, so it's kind of funny. I think the main reason for this is that, I've said this before, I think the main reason for the low fuel capacity is because Nautique does a really good job of keeping all their ballast subfloor and keeping that floor level low or at a natural level, where I think other brands, especially in the lockers and under the seats and stuff, the floor will be up higher. So less storage and less walking room. But in any case, it depends on what matters to you. Do you want more fuel for a longer weekend, or do you want more room in the storage areas, or just for floor depth and that type of thing? It's 23 feet even, and we have max ballast of 3,650. Okay, so let's jump over to the spreadsheet. So you can see here, I've got the G23, the RI230, and the RI245. So length, obviously the RI245 has a foot and 5 inches beyond these two. These two match up. Fuel capacity, again, G23 is the least. Pretty substantial fuel capacity on the 230 and on the 245. This is for a 23-foot boat. 81 gallons is a substantial amount of fuel, so that's pretty good. Max people 16 for a G23, 14 for the RI230, 16 for the RI245. So now you can see why I'm surprised by these numbers, because the 24-foot boat has the same seating capacity as the G23. I'm not exactly sure what that's about. Maybe that's the whole like floor depth thing. I'm not sure. I would expect this to have 18 and this to have 16. So a little bit of a downside to Centurion. You just wouldn't be able to fit as many people on legally. But I would say most people aren't putting 16 to 18 people on their boat. But something to note. Dry weight. So at 23 feet, G23 does a better job than the RI230 on dry weight. And surprisingly does better than the 245 on dry weight. It doesn't surprise me that much because my G23 is about 6 inches over the top of my head when I stand next to it on the trailer, and I'm 6'2", so that's a tall boat. And I have stood next to an RI230, and it does seem like it's not as tall. I would say it's more like at the top of my head or maybe a little lower when I stand next to it. So that makes a little bit of sense. Just G23 is a taller boat. Max ballast. This isn't too surprising to me. Centurion does promote the fact that they have just an amazing wave. So they've got pretty substantial ballast capacity compared to the G23. And so you can see the ending totals. The 230 and the RI245 are still beating out the G23. So as far as weight specs and water displacement based on weight, definitely the Centurions are doing better there. I'm also going to quickly show you an interesting spec difference, which just shows you the difference in how Nautique is doing their subfloor ballast, and how much they put into that, and probably the reason why the boat is taller. As you can see here, I added 2 more columns for subfloor ballast and total sub weight, which just means dry weight plus subfloor weight. So you can see that based on the specs on the Centurion website, you can see their max ballast and their subfloor ballast on both of these models. Over half of the ballast weight that they're marketing that their boat has is above the floor, which means it's going to fill up a good amount of your lockers in the back and in the bow. If I go back to look at this ballast specs for the 230, you can see that 2,500 of it is subfloor. The rest of it is dispersed across above floor spaces. So this is going to take up a good amount of that space below the seats, if not all of it. In the front and the bow. So same here, this is going to take up a lot of the space in your rear lockers. And I'm not sure where this is going. I'm not sure where it's putting this extra bag. So I'm not sure if that's above the floor in your bench seats or not. But that's a lot of different weight above the floor, taking up your locker space. So that's a little bit tricky and something to point out. One of the reasons why they can say they have so much more weight in ballast than Nautique is because Nautique does not do any ballast above subfloor. You can always, set up bags that you pump separately, add pumps, connect them to your pumps that are there and put them above floor. You can always do that, but they don't offer that as a factory add-on. Because they're producing a great wave with all the subfloor that they got. And if you look at the total weight based on subfloor ballast and dry weight, which is just these 2 numbers together, you can see that the Nautique is beating out the other 2 by quite a bit. So that's kind of out of the box, don't have to add any bags above the floor. So just something to note there and something to pay attention to. As far as the comparison goes, but certainly doesn't tell the tale of the full potential. And when you're comparing these numbers, I think technically to get the most ideal comparison, we'd probably have to add some above floor weight here, and maybe that'd be in steel shop bags or something like that, because I know on my boat I do run steel shop bags, and I probably would run at least 500 pounds on this boat. So that puts it in the range or closer to these. So just another sort of spec or feature to note there between the different models. Engine, I'm not going to give anybody the win there because they all use PCM. Another thing to note here, if you didn't know this already, is that Centurion and Nautique are owned by the same holding company, Correct Craft. You know, maybe prior to Correct Craft buying Centurion, Centurion would try to beat out the Nautique series with the way they build it and the way they market it. But I'm pretty sure that they're not going to be working against themselves. So they're probably marketing these as, you know, Nautique is your top tier, Centurions are your mid tier, and then your Supremes, which are owned by the same company, are your you know, value tier or your lower tier. So, but those are just thoughts and my opinions. So fit and finish. You know, I've been in both these boats, and although they have great fit and finish, I mean, in general, wake boats usually do have good fit and finish, but when you compare them to each other, definitely Nautique wins, in my opinion. A great example of this would be, and maybe by 2024 they're offering a different option on this, but for a lot of years now, if you look at what I refer to as the Wake View bench, which is the middle bench seat that you can put in put it in different spots and flip it back, so you have like 2 extra seats looking at the riders. The G23, theirs folds out and it's ready to go. The Centurions, you can move the bench back, but then you have to get the seat backs out of the lockers and stick them in, which to me, that's a clear indication that the G23 or the Nautique series is just a little bit higher fit and finish. So then we have hull design. Now, I'm not necessarily going to give the win to anybody on this one, or to either brand, because they're made by the same holding company. I will say that I definitely think that Centurion has the longest wave out there. From what I can tell, they are sporting their longest wave that you can get. There might be other brands that are getting close to them, but for a while now they've had what I think is the longest wave. Now, I think the only way you could determine whether or not, you know, the RA245 or the RA230 has more push than G23, or just has a better feel than the G23, is if you get behind them. Again, it comes down to rider preference, but if you're looking for the longest wave, definitely Centurion wins. I really like my G23 wave, but you know, for all I know, there's a chance I could get behind the Centurions, and I would like them the same or better for the way it feels, but the length might be the thing that wins it out. So somebody else might be able to comment and tell us that they, you know, if they've ridden behind both of these or all 3 of these, and say, you know, for sure which ones they like the best. But definitely I think Centurion has the longest wave. Ballast fill time. So I added this feature because Centurion is known for their ram fill system. To me, this is not a big deal because in general, for the last probably decade-ish, maybe a little less than that, maybe at least the last 5 years, generally wake boat companies are putting in ballast pumps that are fast enough to where you don't even have to worry about that. The only time you'd have to worry about it is if you're changing from riders that are incredibly different in how they want their wave. For example, if you change from somebody who wants the wave at its max to a kid that you want the smallest amount of wave, then, you know, in those moments, the few extra minutes that you're waiting, you know, you might be like, oh man, I wish I had the Centurion for that. But in general, it's minutes, so it's not that big of a deal. But for certain, if you want to have the fastest fill time out there, you know, the ram fill, I believe, is the top. You know, it's in seconds. So so I will give it to them on that, and I just gave it to the RI230 because obviously it's a little less ballast, so you're filling quicker there. Resale value. This is one I've been bringing up, and this is a feature that I've been bringing up in all of my comparisons. I think it's important to note that again, in this comparison, I believe the Nautique line, or at least the G23, has the best resale value out of all 3 of these boats. Obviously, Centurion has good resale value. I'm not saying it has crappy resale value. In fact, I don't think I've done a comparison yet where any of the boats have bad resale value. I would just say that Nautique has a bit better resale value in this scenario. They just don't stay on the lot, on the sales lot very long. So then we're down to cost. Out of these three boats, I definitely think the RI230 is going to win here. And if you're comparing the RI230 to the G23, I think it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars difference. Probably like $30,000 to $50,000 difference, maybe more. I'm not sure. So if you are on a budget and you're looking for a premium wave, then the RI230 I believe would win here. That, and if you just want, even though this one doesn't have a bigger seating capacity, if you just want a bigger boat and a little bit better wave, I still think the RI245 is going to be cheaper than the G23. I don't know that for sure, but I think it is going to be. In this scenario, I think it just depends on what you're going for. Again, I'll go back to, I'm a wakeboarder, so if I'm picking just based on wakeboard wake, I still think the G23 is going to have the best wakeboard wake out of these three boats. But hardly anybody buys a wake boat based on wakeboard wake these days. It's usually based on surf wave. So if you're buying, if you want to buy one of these boats just based on the most premium surf wave, there's a good chance it's going to be the 245, and you're going to get that for probably a lower cost than the G23. If you want the best bang for your buck, it's a good chance that's going to be the RI230. If you want to buy one that you're gonna lose the least amount of money on, that's where maybe the G23 comes into play. And also, if you want that premium wakeboard wake, that's where that fits for me. So what would Wakeman do in this scenario? Obviously, I'm going to go for the G23 because of the wakeboard wake. But let's say I wasn't such a passionate wakeboarder and I wanted a good surf boat. I would probably want to ride behind at least one of the Centurions to compare to the G23 before I made my decision. And then I'd probably make my decision after that, because I think they're all close enough, especially on cost. If a lot of people, when they're looking at $150,000 plus boats, cost is going to make a difference, because we're talking $30,000 to $40,000, $50,000 difference. That's a big difference. So I think a lot of it depends on what you really like. I will say this. Now Centurion just came out with a new power tower that's pretty cool, but in general, I would say in the last 5 years, aesthetically, I've not been a fan of the Centurion tower, and I love the G23 telescoping tower. So that's one of those things that somebody might be critical about, but that's just an example of my opinion. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to leave comments below on other scenarios that you want me to give my opinions and thoughts on, and tell you what would Wakeman do. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and click on that notification bell so you can be notified of my future videos. I'll see you next week.